What's going on, guys? Today we are working on a 1095 steel knife. I've got a nice bar stock here of 1095, and this knife is a knife that my wife designed. It's a camping style knife with a false edge on one side, a kind of camp knife style. So it's going to be on the smaller side. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to throw this in the forge here, and we're going to cut off the top edge to create a point. And we'll use the cut-off tool that I forged earlier today to do that with. But let's get our steel in the forge and get heated up here. There's our rough tip, and we can forge out the blade here. Okay, as you can see here, this is the knife that my wife designed. It's got kind of a false edge on this side, kind of a swooping motion. It does have a little bit of a recurve in it, and then it's got this little nodule here. It's kind of like a forged in guard that's part of the blade, and then kind of a shorter handle for her smaller hands. So that's the shape. I'm going to leave it right there on the stump so I can kind of look at it as I'm forging it. Trying to just flatten the edge where I kind of pinched it off so we don't get any kind of rollovers or inclusions going on. Trying to get that little swoop in here going on, the little swoop up. You guys might have noticed that the top of my anvil here is kind of odd looking. It's been ground down. Some of the cracks that were in it have been ground out. I'm going to resurface this with some hard weld and then grind it back down. But it's kind of caught me in like a halfway state here, so I've been using it in this state for a while. But I do plan on resurfacing this pretty soon. We'll have to hog some material off of this to get the final shape, but I'm going to start smashing down the recurve section and getting that little hump right here put in where the handle begins, and some of this will just have to be sheared off after the forging is done. Trying to forge this edge down, cut out some of the grinding work. All that lip out, and then we'll have to take the tip of that off with the grinder after it's done. Cut it off at about right there. we're coming up on our shape where it's going to be finished with the forging, and the rest of it is going to be grinding off. We started with a little bit too much material. I could have cut this long ways. We didn't need it to be this wide, but coming up on the end of the forging, and then we're going to quench and switch to the grinder. Okay, so now I'm just going to get the distill taper, which is the taper of it being thicker at the bottom, thinner at the top. I'm going to work on that a little bit, keep it straight, and then we'll go in for the quench, and the rest will be grinder work. We've got our hammer marks, we've got a little recurve in there like the design shows, we got the beginnings of one of those little integral guards, and a little finger dip here. So we're going to get another heat on it, forge out the distill taper a little bit, and then get our final shape, heat it up again, quench it, and go from there. Final straightening, and we're going to go in for the quench. Straight as an arrow. So we are going to heat it up to critical and go in for the quench. to see if it developed any cracks, but we have no warping. So just to let this cool off, and then we'll get on with the profiling and grinding. Alright guys, so as I said before, we had a lot of material here, a lot wider material than what we really needed. This back here is still original bar stock, so you can see how much it's transformed from this to that. But we've stuck to the edge design. It has a belly, it has a slight recurve. The beginnings of this little integral guard thing here, and the finger groove. So we're going to have to remove this whole back wing section and just take it down and remove some of the back material and part of the handle back here, which we already knew. So we've got our edge where it needs to be pretty much, except for removing a little bit here. But right now we're going to see if our heat treat hardened the blade. And I have here a Subasan Japanese hardness tester, and we are going to start with the lowest hardness, which is 40 HRC, and see if it skates this one. Okay, so it's skating that one. You can just tell by the sound it makes. Here's HRC 45. Okay, it's skating that pretty well. It's catching a little bit here and there on the very edge. This one's HRC 50. So it does catch that one. It's not skating super well. You can hear when it ch-ch-ch-ch. Okay, so I would say it's right at HRC 45. So that is fine with me. That means it's going to be pretty simple to sharpen it, not too hard that it's going to snap. Should keep a pretty good edge. So we're going to go from here and do the grinding, the cutting off of the excess material, and then we'll get our edge profile and go on with the build. Alright, so I've been cutting out little section at a time. I go through here and put lines. If it's a curved surface, I put the little horizontal lines and then come through to take those out. It makes it easier. But this one is pretty much a straight shot, so I'm going to cut it straight across. I've already scored it here, and take this large back wing section off here. And then we can finish shaping with the table grinder here and take off all the little sharp edges and all that from the angle grinder. I'm using a cutting wheel on that, by the way, not a grinding wheel, so I can get thinner slices out without it, you know, being harder to do with a thicker grinding wheel. So we're going to keep removing some of this stock here, and then go on to the table grinder. I am keeping this cool, by the way. I'm spraying it with some of this water I had laying around. It's actually soap water, but I didn't want to go change it out. But I'm keeping it cool so that it does not destroy the heat treat on the blade. So I'm watching it and feeling it every now and then. Okay, so after the stock removal, you guys can see here that it's not that far different than the original design. I gave it more of a belly, and this was more pronounced just for a design standpoint, so it provided better grip, and the handle is extended a little bit and a little more narrow. But it's still got a slight recurve right here. It's got the little hump on the back. The tip slightly points upward, and it's got a palm swell here in the handle as well. So from here we're going to bring it down to an edge and get the edge profile down, and put the false edge on the back here, and then we're going to start thinking about handle materials and how we're going to attach the handle. I'm taking a little bit of this belly out. It was a little too drastic, so we're going to thin that down a little bit, because it feels thin right now, but when we get the handle scales on, we can profile it to get the right fit for my wife's hands. But the belly that was on it was a little too drastic, so we're going to take it down. We'll probably hit some areas with a flat disc on the angle grinder, and we'll make our profile come down somewhat with the angle grinder, and we'll finish up on the belt sander to make all the lines, all the grind lines match, and get a good fit and finish on it. So we're going to hit it with a little bit of the bench grinder here to grind out a few little flaws along the edge. But we're getting close here and it's looking good so far. I don't see any hairline cracks or inclusions or anything weird going on here. So we're going to try to thin the blade down just a tad, bring it down a little bit on the bench sander, the belt sander rather, and just a little fit and finish. I think it's going to turn out nice. Round out this finger groove a little. I think I like that better. Deepen the finger groove a little bit. Lowered the belly out on the handle. I think the finger groove still needs to be a little bit larger. Maybe bring it back a little bit right here. Alright, I think I can live with that. Gonna go around the edge of the knife and take care of any imperfections. Okay, I have a flat disc here, the sand flat disc. I believe it's 80 grit, but it's kind of so old and scratched that I can't read the grit on it. But we still have plenty of material left on this one. I think it's only been used a couple times. So I'm going to just run it up and down to get some of the dips polished out and just generally get a flatter, more normalized finish. And then we'll go to the belt sander for the final profiling. I am going to go ahead and put most of the edge on with this and the false edge, and then I'll make it look all even and pretty on the belt sander for the last step. You never want to keep sanding or messing with a heat-treated knife if it begins to turn colors. If it turns like a hay brown, you know, you're all right, but if it gets into blue right on your edge, then you've pretty much ruined the edge of the blade. So be sure that you monitor the temperature. If you can stand to hold it, it's safe. You haven't gone too far. But what I've been doing is just spraying it with water every few minutes as I'm sanding it down, and it's doing pretty good. You have to be particularly careful around points because they're so thin. So we're going to keep doing this, keep at it, get an edge on it, and then get our final edge on the belt sander. This blade is hardened and it's sanding harder, so it seems like a lot is happening, but when you back up and look, you haven't removed that much material because it's actually you know, a hardened blade already. But we're just going to go step at a time here, try not to overheat it. So we're pretty close to an edge here, but we have more meat to take off. So I'm going to keep hitting at it with this flap disc here. Okay, so partnering the angle grinder and the belt sander, we've got a pretty decent profile on the blade now. You can clearly see where the edge begins. I don't currently have the belt equipment to be able to get really precise edges, because if you can see here, here's the main problem. If you have one of these belt sanders in this style, these berms on the edges make it to where you cannot get your blade to the very edge. It's impossible to do, and it would leave a line right here, which is not where we needed it. So I had to depend on the angle grinder for profiling this. This was helpful though in grinding the edges down and making a flat surface on the surface of the blade, things like that. So pairing them both, we were able to get these results here. But I just switched out our 80 grit wheel for a 120 worn out wheel, which is giving it more of a polished look. So I'm going to go over the whole thing with that. Bring the edge down a little bit more. You can see some shiny spots where it's not all the way sharpened yet. So I'm going to bring that down, and then we'll do the final sharpening with a Lansky stone. And I'll hit the rest of the surface here as well with the flap disc and get a decent polish on it. Going for kind of like a matte polish. I don't have the equipment to buff this to a mirror shine at the moment. So we're going to go on and hit it with the 120 here and sharpen it up, and we'll be able to move on to the handle. Okay, so there's our final edge that we're going to get with the high-speed angle grinder. You can still see right here it's not all the way, the edge is not all the way defined, but I'm going to sharpen it with the Lansky stone the rest of the time. This is a convex grind. This would be concaved, this is convex, and this is flat, so it's a convex grind, so the sides are slightly rounded. But I'm going to continue to sharpen this with a Lansky stone for a while, and then see if it needs any more polish or any other kind of work on it, and then we can go to the handle. I did make the edge slightly steeper, or more blunt rather, on towards the tip, because I wanted that for strength. I didn't want there to be a chance of the tip bending or breaking off, so I did put a little extra meat up there. Alright guys, so we got it all sharpened up and ground down to its final state here, ready for the handle. Gonna do a little paper test here. Now this is not a razor edge, this is a strong edge meant for camping, chopping wood, chopping tinder, whittling down wood for primitive tools and bushcraft type stuff. So I don't know how it's going to do on the paper test. It does cut pretty good, even on the paper. Pretty sharp on the plunge. And then if you take your time and rake the edge on, it can get pretty clean cuts on the edge as well. So, and then we're going to chop a little piece of wood here just to show how it chops. Okay, so you guys may have noticed I did not polish the handle up as well as good as I did the blade itself. I wanted this to still have some of the scratch lines in it, so when I clamp it, the handle scales with the epoxy and the pins, that the glue has something to grab to, and it's a good tight seal. So I didn't get a high polish on that. But we're going to see how it chops some wood here. So, inspection of the edge, there's no edge deflection, no rolls, no chip outs. So, that was across the grain on some pressure treated pine. Pretty good results. So we're going to go on to the handle and clamp that up and put some pins in. Okay, so we are using black walnut today, locally sourced. And we have cut angles per design of my wife for the handle, so that the integral guard here, the finger scoop, whatever you want to call it, sticks out from the handle. So it's going to be attached right there somewhere, and she's chosen where she wants her pins. One kind of close to the top, one down here kind of close to the bottom, with some meat on both sides. So we are going to go ahead and drill these holes, mark them and transfer them onto the other scale, and then mark them and transfer it onto the knife handle. And then we'll dry fit the scales with the brass pin, and if everything fits on the dry fit really well, then we'll glue it up and clamp it, and then we'll get on to the handle shaping tomorrow. Alright, so we reluctantly drilled our holes through our steel here, and now we are going to dry fit it with our scales and the brass pins. I cut this in half with my table grinder, and it pointed one end, and that will work well for guiding it through correctly. So we need to put this on this side first. Okay, Where's the hammer? Alright, so there's our dry fit. So now we need to pop it apart. Now that we know everything fits, we need to put some epoxy in between the scales, clamp it, and wait for tomorrow for the epoxy to dry, and then we'll shape the handle, urethane it, and I think that might be it. Alright, time for the glue up. Got a little styrofoam in there with it. Shouldn't hurt anything, as long as it's not showing on the edge. Alright, so let's see here. This side over here, right? Alright, let's go ahead and get these started in here. Okay, so far so good. Let's get the last scale on. Panic! Panic! Okay, there we go. Get them centered up there, and then we'll clamp it down. So, got clamp number 1 here. We'll do it right in the middle, towards the end. Clamp it down real good and tight, without busting the wood or anything crazy. And then we will clamp the top side here. And we've got good squish out all the way around, as you can see, even behind here, which means we had plenty of glue. So, only thing I'm seeing is around our pins, not any glue coming out there. So we may just want to take what we have left here on the board and dab it around these pins so that it can run down in the cracks a little better. But by the time we grind down to where the glue was anyway, it may just fix itself that way. Alright guys, so we got it good and glued up here, clamped down, good squish out everywhere. And if we grind this down and next to our pins we have spaces, we can always fill that in later with some epoxy. But for the moment we're going to let this dry until tomorrow, and we'll come out and finish our knife. Alright guys, it's a new day and our glue has set up. So we're going to get these clamps off, zip off these brass pins. And we learned from last time on the last knife restoration that we messed with handle scales that the belt sander is pretty slow at it. The speed of this sander is not fast enough to get it off of there very quickly. So we take the bulk of it off with the angle grinder with the flat disc attachment, and then we finish up on the belt sander with some fine profiling. So we're going to take the pins, zip those off. We're going to sand around the perimeter of the knife handle itself until we hit steel all the way around. And one scale was a tiny bit longer than the other. You guys might be able to see that there. And we're going to have to come in and hand saw this one to match this one because this is a little bit too long here. So I'm going to wrap this in blue painter's tape so I don't cut myself, and we're going to get on with working on the handle here. Okay, so we've taken off the extra brass that was sticking out there. Now we're going to attach this in the bench vise there and hit this with a disc sander on the angle grinder there, and get it profiled all the way to the edge of the blade all the way around. And then we'll have to come in and saw this one short to match the other one, and go from there. Alright guys, we got a brand new 36 grit wheel on this. We're going to see how quick we can get this material removed. Okay, I've marked this where this needs to come off at. We're going to go ahead and saw that little end piece off. But we've got our profile around the edge sanded pretty much all the way. We're going to hit it with lighter grain sandpaper to get more of that shine back after we're finished with this and after we're finished profiling it down all the way. But there's the basic shape. So we're going to go ahead and get this piece sawn off. Alright, so we've evened out our sides pretty well. Pretty even. This one kind of hooves upward, but that'll take care of itself when we sand that edge off and we lower the profile. So now we just have to round this out, take the bulk down with the flat disc. We have a few little polishing things to do because we've scratched our blade here with some tooling and it left some glue residue. So just some cleanup here around where we just did this, and we'll round this out and get to polishing up the tang here, get it looking nice. So we still need to lose some weight off the sides, but that's the basic idea of the profile there. Something that has a nice finger groove here. It works well with this. So we're going to keep working at it, sanding a little bit at a time off of here, going back and forth from the belt sander to the disc sander here, and get the results we want. We're also going to take these big shelves down at an angle, get that looking right. Okay, so we've hogged off most of the material. We're just kind of fine shaping, kind of losing some of this width here. So I've switched from a 36 grit to an 80 grit. Alright guys, so the major profiling is done. She has held the knife and has approved. So we are going to do the final touches on the belt sander and some hand sanding and get these burnt spots off from the high speed of the sand wheel. And we'll have to touch up some scratches where I touched over on the blade here a few times. And these raggedy edges we can clean up with the hammer and chisel gently shortly after we finish with the sanding here. So just about there. Alright guys, so this is after the hand sanding. This is the final handle shape. I took a little sharp chisel and got the rest of that glue and leftover splinters off on the top there. And that is finished. Only thing now that we have left to do is to put some linseed oil on this handle for now and see what those colors look like. And there we go. There's the final product. We got a nice dark patch on this side, looks pretty good. And then we have like a black patch that runs through here. Interesting markings on there. Alright, I've got some lines on my face because of wearing the mask, but anyways, this was a really enjoyable video to do. My wife's design for a camping knife. I hope she gets years of use out of this. I know she enjoyed filming this. Hope you guys enjoyed coming along. Lots more projects, 3D prints, blacksmithing, all that good stuff coming on the channel. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Ow. That's hot, man.